Monet, you're on mute there. Huh?
Thank you, Roger. Sorry about that. Thanks for saving me. I just want to say, good day, everybody. I'm Monet Wolford. I'm a Power Platform Technical Specialist from Microsoft, and welcome to the first Cape Town Power Platform User Group. I'm so glad to see that we have such a great turnout. The purpose of this meetup group is to build a community around the Power Platform, share learnings and ideas. As this solution grows, it's getting more and more difficult to keep up with these community events. Are a great way to share knowledge to know what is new. But, just maybe to talk around what is the Power Platform and what it consists out of. I don't know, maybe you want to chip in there?
Thanks, Monet. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our first event. It's quite exciting times. I know we've been trying for a while to get this event off the ground in Cape Town, and finally it's happening. So yeah, the Power Platform has evolved quite a bit. I mean, there's lots of different P's that makes up the Power Platform pod now. We have 4 P's in the pod. So we have PowerApps, we have Power Automate, that changed its name from Flow. We have Power BI, and we have a new kid on the block as well. So there's the Power Virtual Agent as well, something that stemmed out of the Dynamics world. And then most people will say, hey, but what happened to RPA? But yeah, RPA, remote robotic process automation, it's actually just another type of flow. So it sits under the Power Automate stable. Hasn't quite got its own P in the pod yet, but yeah, it sits under Power Automate. But yeah, together those 4, leveraging all the same base components like CDS and the base security components and stuff of the platform, makes for a very awesome platform, tightly integrated, where organizations can do amazing stuff, and obviously address what I think Microsoft's been trying to achieve for a while now, and that is to empower everybody, person, organization on the planet to achieve more.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ewan. Normally we have these community events in person at the Microsoft offices, but for tonight we'll have it via Teams. But be sure to interact on the Meetup site and get updates on the latest community nights that's coming up. I would like to present and show you all working with us. So please feel free to reach out to us if you want to present something or you want to discuss something or even just show us what you're working on. We can do this either reaching out directly to us or even on the Meetup site. We've also got a lot of forums and polls on the Meetup site for you to complete. Topic suggestions, things going ahead, and also, what are we looking at presenting going ahead? There's a lot of packed agenda items tonight. So, myself, Ewan, as well as our 2 guest presenters that is from Liberty, and so that's going to Steve and Shawn, that's going to show us some of the great work they've done. Just some of the logistics. If I can ask everybody just to mute themselves and then unmute them when they've got a question. We've also trying out a new site called Pigeonhole. So it is pigeonhole.at/CTPPUG. If you have any questions, the nice thing about that is that you can ask questions without posing any of your name or any of your personal details in there. So let's say you're a bit shy to ask questions, you can do that. Otherwise, what you can also do is just maybe interrupt us very briefly and ask your questions verbally, and we can answer to the best of our knowledge, right? So with that said, let's dig right into it. Let me pull up this amazing PowerPoint slide that I have. Let's quickly get that up and running. So once again, there's the URL. It's pigeonhole.at/CTPPUG, right? Please also note that we are recording these sessions, so the recording will be made available for anybody that wants to view it afterwards. Some of the items that we're going to discuss in tonight's session is going to be, some of the news that's out from the Power Platform side. Then you and myself, we're going to take you through, some of the information around the COVID or the crisis communication app. Then we're going to have, Steve and Shawn talking about empowering Liberty Direct in their call centers. And then lastly, we're going to just have some time for some Q&A. So maybe let's dive right into it. So new features within PowerApps is the ability to add things like we've added geospatial features, and that gives you ability to make use of the ability for Azure Maps. Those are going to be released soon inside of the PowerApps. There's a great video on YouTube about this also. And if you have to use any of the mapping features that's available within, the Azure Map functionality, this is a great feature and function to make available within the app. Right? I've seen some dashboarding where people add, pinpoints on a map, and it interacts greatly with the application itself. You can have it and use it for multiple different mapping features and capabilities and requirements. So it's a great addition within the Power Apps. Next, another great announcement, what we've seen is that you can now bring in model-driven and canvas-driven applications into one application. So into the Power Apps app on the mobile phone itself, you've got now the ability to go and add, the model-driven and the canvas-driven apps all in one container, where previously you didn't have that ability to do that. This is a great way of going forward, because if you from a Dynamics perspective, I don't know if you guys can remember, but you always had the Dynamics app running. So it's primarily model-driven apps, and then also you had Power Apps running in a separate application itself. And this is where everything is starting to get together into one single platform or one single solution, right? So those are some of the two key areas that I want to talk about. There is another few that we've just announced today. So the Business Application Summit, that's going to be available on stream and on demand as well. So please attend that. That is one of our biggest Dynamics, events of the year, next to Dynamics Saturday. No, I'm joking. But that is one of our biggest events of the year. There's also with all the new releases coming out. Talking about releases, the Wave 2 release in our April features is just launched. So you'll see a lot of features becoming available within the platform. Be sure to check out YouTube for all the latest features and how that works within the platform and all the changes that has been made. There was a Power Apps 24-hour video live stream as well. So I would just say go on the YouTube site on the Microsoft Dynamics channel and be sure to check that out. The next thing we want to cover is the crisis communication app. So as you guys know, we're sitting in a difficult time at the moment with this whole COVID that is out now, the COVID-19 virus. And what Microsoft has done is they stepped up to the party and they've released multiple applications. So one of the applications that we've seen is that it's a Power App, and with this Power App, you can do very specific functions in your organization to manage people working from home, people making requests, people saying, this is what I need, and it goes back to the organization, goes back to HR. It can be things like, what is the latest stats update, or I need assistance, I'm not feeling well, what's the company policy around X, Y, and Z, those type of things that we've seen. Myself and Ewan have been rolling this thing out at customers in quite a large scale. And I'll just show you guys some of the features and functions that's available in the application itself. And then, this is a Power App. So, it is a templatized Power App, so you can go and customize the application itself for your needs. And then I'll hand it over to Ewan to also just take us through some of the changes that we've picked up and some of the best practices that we've seen in larger enterprise customers and changes people like to make. So with that said, let me just go and share my screen. Okay, so on the Power App itself, it's deployed in two applications. So the first application that you'll have is the admin application side, where you set up specific items around your company and also distribution of this. And the second is the crisis communication application itself that's going to be rolled out into the end user. From an admin perspective, what we can do, let's go back one. From an admin perspective, what we can do.
You can actually share your screen. You're not sharing the screen that you use for demo. Yeah, we're still seeing the PowerPoint deck.
Okay, thank you, Ewan.
Perfect, thanks.
Great, thank you, Ewan. So from a Power Apps perspective, you'll have primarily two applications that you run, right? The first one would be the admin side of it, where you can set up this specific functions inside of an organization. And the second part of it is the end user application, where they would run this either on the mobile device or in a browser based on a PC like what I've got in front of me. From the admin perspective, I can go and I can set up my key information on the app itself. I can have, for instance, what is the URL. I can have an email, as well as this Azure AD group ID. Now, this is very important because how this application works, it in actual fact goes through the Azure AD group. It loops through that group. It pulls out all the members, and those members will then get the notifications that you specify here. So I can specify it must be a push notification, or it must be Teams notification, or even an email notification. And that is where that Azure AD group comes in. Also, something to note is that we've got here what we call feature flags. So, the application is built in such a way that you can toggle certain features on and off that you want the users not to be able to use. So in my case, I said, I don't care about the status. So, if you're working from home or working from the office, so I'm not going to make use of that. So I toggled it off, right? If I just go back one and save it, I'll show you how the app physically works, right? So from an application perspective, there is multiple ways that you can communicate with your staff. I can go and I can specify company news. So I can go and push out company news in that. So as you guys can see, there's been a few posts that I've already put through here. So if I go and I put in a post here, I can go and give it a title and some information on here. And as you guys can see, I've got some great ability to add a lot of, reach controls in here. So I'll just say, go. And then the blurb is normally the little information that's being displayed once you receive that, push notification. So I can then just say live update, whatever I want. And that's as easy as that. So once I've done that, now what's happening is that in the background is pushing the data out, and then everybody that is subscribed to that Azure AD group will then start receiving that information, right? At the same time as I can specify helpful hints, and this is all the information that I just generate at the moment is a little bit of data, and this is everything that is going to be available at the end user. So from an app end user perspective, I can, for instance, say wash your hands. I can also say wash your hands for example, right? Very, and once again, all of this is templatized. So, if you want to go, you can customize it, you can change it. There's a lot of information around FAQs. The great thing around the FAQ portion of it is that, I can go and then extend that into other areas of interest. So what I mean by that is if you have, for instance, things like a bot running, you can tap in a bot into the FAQ section so people don't, phone or send you a bunch of messages the whole time. At the same time is that what we've seen is people like to just use the push notification side of it. They don't really care about links or company contacts, those type of things. They just want a way to communicate with, the end users, right? So that's from an admin perspective. Then from an end user perspective, right, I've got this application. Let me see if I can actually scale this a bit better. Maybe not. And then on this application itself, right, you can see it's essentially a lot the same, where I can just go and click into any of these information, and I can also view that admin settings that was shared with me. I've got here an option that says make a request. When I select that option, it will actually bring up a screen. And then in the screen is that goes back into my HR side, So I can, for instance, say I'm feeling sick. What do I need to do? And once I've submit that, what will happen is that message will go back into a Teams channel. And that Teams channel has got people that look after these responses. So these requests and responses, and they would go in actual fact go and have a one-on-one consultation with this specific person. You can decide what needs to happen on that application request. But this is a great application that Microsoft has rolled out, and it's built on PowerApps. So, we've seen a lot of people change and extend that. Add new features into it, scale it down, change the look and feel of it. And also what's great about it, it is free, right? So if you want to get this app, let me just go back into my slide. If you want to get this app, be sure to visit aka.ms/crisiscom. That will take you through to our docs site. And then on the docs site itself, it takes you through how to deploy this template, what to do with it, how to set it up, and then also what is required from a prerequisite side of it, right? I'm going to give over to Ewan to maybe just step you through to some of the changes that we've seen and changes that have been implemented at customers.
Thanks, Morné. All right, just a couple of things. Hey, Morné, you didn't tell me I didn't switch my video on earlier on when I was chatting. I'd actually forgotten. All right, so let me share my screen. Okay.
I must say, Ewan, wherever that is, your background looks awesome.
I wish I was there. Lockdown, yeah, tough, man. Listen, so that just to show everyone that crisis.com link, when you click it, this is where it will take you to. So, and this will take you through the actual kind of the blog on it. And then from here, you can then link into the full instructions, which is that link over there. And then you get the full instructions, which is actually in doc. You'll see that if anyone's familiar with the docs, which is fairly extensive for PowerApps, it's now one of the sample applications that we put under the sample apps. So if you go to sample apps in docs, you'll find it there as well, CrisisCom. So that's the easiest way to remember. All right. So let's have a quick look through this thing. So a couple of things. I'm going to walk you guys through this this deck, but just note a lot of this deck was actually built not by myself. It was built by a very clever guy, Michael Donovan. Most of you guys might know. He kind of prepared this in preparation for same event we're doing tonight, but in Johannesburg, in the Johannesburg user group. Obviously, Morné, myself, and lots of other people have contributed to a lot of the findings, which Michael then used to put this deck together. All right, so as I showed you that link down there, that link I showed you, that's where it will go to. And then something key to note here, when we kind of built this template for the crisis comms app, we did realize that we didn't want licensing to be an issue. This is not about us trying to sell anything or promote licensing, etc. So what the team did is they had a look and thought, what is the best way to put this app together that doesn't use any of the premium SKUs that we talk to licensing. So, for example, we've already made Office 365 available on trial for a period of, I think it's about six months. So with that, you'd have all the base licensing necessary to run PowerApps. And we've also ensured that any of the data repositories that gets used for storing you saw Mona showed you the admin app, we're actually storing config information and stuff like that. That's all stored in SharePoint lists. We've even gone as far as part of the solution template, to provide a flow, which will automatically build that list for you within SharePoint. So it's fairly nice and straightforward. And then the one item that was a challenge was Mona mentioned, which was the notifications. That was a premium SKU, and what the team did is they converted that premium SKU to a standard SKU for the duration of this 6-month trial period. So there is absolutely no license implication and no reason why any organization, big or small, cannot actually implement this crisis communication app. All right. So a couple of things. I think the key thing when you do deploy or want to use this crisis comms app is to kind of, most people kind of just say, oh, let's install it because we want to see how it works, or they want to kind of learn how someone's put an app together. That is fine. You can do that. But the other thing that's also key is if you're going to be using this for actual crisis comms, then ask the big question. Does this crisis app meet your requirements? So read through the documentation. If you are evaluating, but keep that in mind. And then come to the conclusion. If you need to make small tweaks, that's fine. Then customize the apps. In other words, you know what your requirements are. You had a look at the app, you read up on it, or you saw a demo on it, and you believe that it will largely work for you with a couple of tweaks, then by all means install, deploy it, and customize the app. However, if you get to the conclusion that, hang on, this is not really what we need, but maybe you want to use it as the basis and then go and edit and make lots of changes to it, then I don't think this is the right solution for you. Make that hard decision, and rather than create your own Power App from scratch. And I'll tell you from experience, if you try and take a Power App and you want to go, and especially a complicated one like this, there's lots of components and lots of pieces to it. And you want to go and customize it to the nth degree to actually use it as the basis for your own app, you're going to spend more time. It's actually best just to create your own app. Or you can use some other solution like Microsoft Forms or SharePoint communication site, or without Power BI or any of the other means. But please make that decision up front. So some interesting learnings. This is the learnings that the team have put together from users of the app. So Mona showed you the admin app. And as I've mentioned, that writes data, config information, content, etc., to SharePoint Online. So it uses a SharePoint list, and also the app, the user app, will read all that data from SharePoint Online as well. So anything, all the content is all stored in SharePoint Online. The app is responsive, and I think Mona showed you when he scaled the web browser, you could see that the app automatically scaled to fit the screen. Third thing, it uses a lot of components, as I mentioned. So take note, if you're going to customize, take note of that, minimum customization. And it has a function called concurrent on app start. That's just something we picked up that we saw already. So I'm going to walk you through some of those changes that we would recommend you look at or consider doing. And these are common things that you'd want to change. There's about 5 of them. I'll try and walk you through them quickly. So key thing you need to decide is if you are starting a new trial of Office 365 and you're fairly new to the platform and you decide that, hey, I'm going to go and build this as a Power App, but you actually haven't deployed Office 365 as yet, you're going to notice that you're going to have one key challenge, and that is mailboxes, because your mail is sitting in another mail store somewhere. And the app is using mail for notification, for sending stuff, send requests, etc., notifications. And if you don't have a mailbox, by default, it uses the user signed in mailbox in Office 365. And if that's not there, you're going to get lots of issues. So that's the one key thing to go and make. There's 3 places this is an issue. It's on the send request, notification to say where you're working from, and then also when you want to set your out of office. You obviously can't because you don't have an Office 365 email box. Okay. So this is just the area that you need to go and look at if you're going to make this. I'm just going to switch out once because I think it's key to actually show this. Let's see, where do I want to go from here? Okay. Just want to show this, and then not everyone's kind of worked with the Power Platform. Where that is, if you look at, not the admin app, where was I? Oh, yeah, okay. So if you've gone and you've edited the app, okay, so for example, just starting from scratch, app, crisis communication, admin app, and there's your crisis comms app, okay? So basically, if you go and you edit this particular app, then you can edit and go and have a look how the app was constructed and how it was built. So all the slides I'm going to show you now is talking to where to make the edits and the changes. So if you can edit that on the app, you're getting into the edit capability. This is showing all the different screens on the left down here. I'm specifically talking about the screen, the request screen. And then if you look at this button, the submit button over here, what is actually happening is when a user clicks on that button, it's actually executing some code, which is the onSelect code over there, all right? And effectively what it's doing, it's running this particular piece of code. Now, what is key here is you'll notice that it is calling Office 365.Outlook and sending an email. So that's what we're talking about. If you actually don't have a mailbox, you can't actually do this because it's not valid and it's always sending it from the user. Okay, let me just switch back to the deck. Okay. So this is where we're talking about this piece of code and it's sending to Office 365 Outlook. It's basically sitting behind that submit edit button. Okay, now we all kind of know where I'm showing you the code. All right, so what we suggest you do if you don't have mailboxes, maybe swap the email from a SharePoint list. So in other words, send the request to a SharePoint list and then you can use Flow there. So the app will send email from employee's mailbox to catch all mailbox. That's currently what it's doing. Then the Flow listens to catch that and send notifications to a crisis team or teams. That's currently what it's doing. So what we're saying is start a Flow, which then adds the request info to a SharePoint list. Okay. Then that Flow will read items from SharePoint list and send notifications. So we're basically just using SharePoint list in the Flow instead of the email. Okay. And effectively, this is what you do. So that piece of code on the on-submit button, on-select on the submit button, just basically swap it out with this piece of code over here, and you can see this add an item to SharePoint and send an email.run. That's effectively a Flow. You build that Flow and put this piece of code in there. This part is pretty much the same. You can actually just simplify it and build a Flow, and this Flow is effectively this, creating an item. And this pretty much will be the same little body items that I think the original item used anyway. And this will then just create that item for you in SharePoint. Once it's in SharePoint, you can then have the Flow and then pick it up on the SharePoint list, which is effectively here. This is changing the existing Flow, which is the crisis communication request Flow. So one thing I probably didn't show you, so let me just show you that quickly. Just show you very briefly where that is. So if you were in Flow and you go edit your Flow, let me just show you where this is. So in Flows, for example, my Flows, you'll see that in this environment, I installed the COVID app. This is the one we're talking about, this crisis communication. Once again, you go edit, and then on edit, you'll be able to see exactly when the email arrives. And that was the one you're going to change that out for what we're suggesting you do. Okay, let's switch back quickly. So instead of when an email arrives, you're saying when an item is created within SharePoint list. And that's it, and everything else should trigger and work the same from there. A couple of quick little changes. In the app again, if you want to share your working status, that's not going to work as well. So we suggest they remove that feature, or once again, change that to Flow and use an update feature within SharePoint or something. Also, the out of office, you don't have a mailbox, so you can't set an out of office because you don't have the mailbox. So once again, remove that feature, just turn it off. Okay. The second thing we then suggest you do for notify employees of new news on more than one medium. So what you'll notice, and Morna showed you in that admin app, there was 3 places. There was a drop down. You could choose notification, either case email or Teams or push notification. And the reason it's either or, it's because if you look at the actual flow, it's a switch. It's a switch down those 3 parts. So what you could do is you could decide to make it do all 3, for example, because maybe someone's using email, someone's Teams, and it's not the case where your whole organization is going to use one specific one. And just basically put them into one linear tree. So basically send a push notification, then send email and post. So you do all 3 instead of doing a either or. The other thing to note is that I think Monet showed you that the ID for the Azure AD group that you put in there. Now with the AD group, we have a challenge in the sense that with the current licensing, the free licensing, you can only really, it's limited to putting 5,000 users. So if you have an organization that's larger than 5,000 users, then you're going to start hitting problems currently with this licensing mechanism. Even with the premium licensing, there is also some challenges around that because, the Teams connector, you're going to have notification issues when you're sending to too many users. So what we suggest you do there is a couple of things. You can take that out, delete the AD group from the get group. That's just about that switch that I showed you in the flow. And then, you can think of maybe replacing it with a SharePoint list, for example. So you could have a case that maybe initially when somebody signs into the app, they could be prompted to want to opt in for notification. And when they say yes, then you could have a flow that creates an entry for you in the SharePoint list. And then instead of going through and looking through a DL, replace that with the SharePoint list and iterate through the list to see this person signed in, has he opted in? Yes, he's opted in, send a comment in. All right. That was that push notification piece over there. That's a drop list there. And then one other thing you can do is remove the notify people you're working from home, because out of office obviously not working. To do that, just share status, click to off. Okay, that's in the admin app. And then the last thing, most exciting piece, change your branding. So in the admin app, you can obviously set up some logo stuff there, but also on the branding, if you don't like the colors and stuff like that, you can also go and just change your background. This is in the app itself, and then go change your background colors and make it your color scheme, your color brand. That's it. That's it for me, Warren. Have you been watching for any questions on the? I kind of went on, but I'm not sure if there was any questions posted. I didn't see anything in Teams, but I couldn't look at the moderation screen in Pigeonhole.
Yeah, so at the moment, please, guys, feel free to ask any questions in any of those 2 platforms. The URL for Pigeonhole is pigeonhole.at/CTPPUG, or even in the window, the chat window of our Teams channel. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our next presenters. And once again, if you guys feel that please, if there's got any questions or you want to find out more, please feel free to ask them. And then also, in the future, if you want to present maybe a great solution you've been working on, or even just give us some feedback on, how you experience the Power Platform, please do so. And then, we are always looking for great ways and innovative ways of, how people are using our solutions. Okay, I'm just
Monet, so you've got like 5 minutes of our normal time before you switch to the Liberty team. I see it's fairly small, the group, it's like only about seven guys. So if you feel it's easier just to come off mute and you want to ask a question, maybe before we move to the next part of the session, feel free to come off mute if you want and ask a question, and then we can hand over to the other presenters. Anybody have a question? Maybe you want to come off mute? No? Going once, going twice, gone.
Thanks, Shawn. Maybe also just to mention, from a medical solution perspective, we've also got another solution. So that's more And what I mean from a medical solution perspective, there's also templates available on exactly the same site you shared, but that is more for people that walk into a clinic, and then you can capture their profile. You can capture, for instance, what's its symptoms, what medicine did you dispense to them, those type of information you can add as well. And we've seen a lot of our customers in that industry that's jumping to that offer, right? Because once again, Microsoft has made the solutions available, and I think it is a really great solution. Then also from
maybe just to add on that
sure.
app it's called the Hospital Emergency Response app, and just to mention, to find it pretty easy, it's the second app in the sample app. So the link I showed you, we saw the CrisisCom app as a sample app. That second one Mona is talking about is actually the second sample app, so it's quick and easy to find it.
Yeah, and I think lastly, the changes that we were discussing and what we've seen, a lot of people not necessarily need to make those changes. It's just in a sense where, for instance, you don't have a Outlook email, or you've got an industry that's more than 5,000 employees or people that you need to roll this app out for. I think something else to mention was quite interesting is that, when we started rolling out these apps, there's a lot of planning that actually goes behind this, right? So let's say you're a company that's got different branches. You've got one in Cape Town and Joburg and in Durban. Do you roll out one application? Do you roll out multiple applications? Do you roll it out differently per region? Or, those type of things also comes into play. So that's also something to take note of. And then also some of our other customers, like you and were mentioning, because this is a template, we've seen them also starting to make changes to those templates to ask people that other questions, in a sense of, we understand you're working remotely, but do you have the right tools to work remotely? Do you have data? Do you have a laptop? Are you secure in your working environment, et cetera, right? So all of those type of changes we've also seen happening on this application. And once again, because it is PowerApps, low code, no code, the changes to that application and the rollout of that application, we're talking, hours to maybe a day or two rather than months with, if we look at custom application development life cycles. With that said, right, I would like to give it over to Stephen and Shawn. And once again, guys, we're open for any questions or any suggestions. Thanks, guys.
Super, Mona. Thanks for that. Yeah, just as a side point, I mean, at Liberty, we use Teams and we use the COVID-19 app. So it's just nice that I didn't realize that you guys are going to go through that specifically, but we use it every day, and it's very nice and simple to use. So just for everyone's context, Mona and Ewan reached out just to do sort of a bit of a customer journey on one of the Microsoft applications, and specifically the Unified Service Desk application within the Microsoft stack, with the project that we rolled out with Microsoft Dynamics 365 together with a few other applications. I'm Stephen Andrew, and I run IT at Liberty Direct, and with me on the project was Shawn Redmond, the principal consultant at Red Arc. So before we started the project, we got business into a room and just try to understand exactly what we were trying to solve. And after a few debates on a whiteboard, this is what we came up with as a problem statement. So in a contact, and Liberty Direct is a contact center environment. We sort of insurance, life cover, salary protection, serious illness cover, disability cover over the phones and via the web. And in our any other call center, especially in the financial services industry, there are many disparate systems which agents today. And we cannot afford adherence. Agents having to put up with slow screens, which add to the call duration along with customers. The multiple system integrations to try and plug the applications together in the sales flow, and all of this leads to long training cycles as a result. And in an industry, in a course where there's high, you sometimes even find that the sales cycles are even longer than the 10 agents. So that's really what we were trying to solve through the project, and Unified Service Desk was one of the key components in the puzzle to try and the benefit of not having this problem in our environment. I'll hand over to Shawn to take you through the demo of some of this together.
Thanks very much, Steve. Can you just go one back, please? There. Can you go back to the challenges, please? Thank you. Okay, so maybe further on to Steve's points around the problem statements. This is really highlighting what I've seen as the 4 maybe big items that are challenges within a contact center environment. So often the agents are having to deal with multiple line of business applications, and you're actually relying on them knowing how to get what information where in order for them to become effective. And obviously with average handling time and after call work being 2 key metrics within the contact center, the problem becomes quite apparent when you're trying to get guys through a specific flow as quickly as possible, and they're having to try and figure out which system to do what in. So often I've seen really 2 scenarios. So scenario 1 is where people try and lump everything into one system, and then they try and manage the integration between that one system and other systems. Or the other extreme is that there's a numerous systems that the agency is expected to engage with. So the telephony platform, something to look up the customer, something to log the request, and then to actually go into the line of business application and physically do the work. All that while trying to keep their after call work as low as possible. When you look at the scenario where customers are trying to leverage one application, what often happens is that the success of it really lies in how well or how poorly the integration is done to underlying systems. And when the integration isn't done well, there's often, I'd say, mistrust in the data being presented to the agents, but also you're having to duplicate data between your line of business applications and whichever system you've selected to be the one system that you're going to get the agents to use. And as I mentioned earlier, the lack of trust is quite a big challenge, because they're presented with data, but they don't really believe that that's a true reflection of the data. And then one other thing around what Steve was saying is you're always fighting this constant battle of staff churn within a contact center environment. So inherently there's always high staff churn, and if you've got multiple systems, the training cycles become quite long. So in order to get an effective contact center agent, there's quite a long process to familiarize themselves with the various systems. And it's always a race against time to make sure that they're productive, but then they're not one of the guys that actually leaves. And lastly, around adherence to call scripts. So tied into point number 1. So if you've got all these multiple line of business applications, you're very much reliant on the agents following a call script, potentially sitting next to his desk or from repetitive experience, and you have no real way of guiding the agent, or for that matter auditing that the processes have been followed according to how we expect them to be followed. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the 4 buckets of challenges that the contact centers face. If you can go to the next slide. So as part of the proposed solution or the vision at Liberty Direct, it was to try and leverage Unified Service Desk as the front end to facilitate the process and also the processing of data between line of business applications. So if I take you quickly through this diagram, it's not that complicated, is at the top you've got your contact center users and your back office staff, and they primarily would be engaging with the Unified Service Desk. You would have some admin staff and back office staff engaging directly either with the line of business application if they're in billing, or directly with Dynamics 365 if they're sitting in the campaigns and marketing space. But then what Unified Service Desk would then do is it would then surface Dynamics 365 as well as any of your underlying line of business applications, all within one single user interface through tabs. And so this was proposed, was envisaged at the time. So this was done obviously before Steve and them actually implemented it. And the whole point was to try and ensure that there was light touch integration and that you're guiding the users, the contact center agents, through a single interface, but not necessarily hotwiring everything into the interface, high levels of integration and trying to make one of the systems the be all and end all. So that was the vision, and what Unified Service Desk allowed for is that you actually have access to your systems that sit within the network or within the firewall. So at bigger corporates, getting through firewalls and whitelisting URLs can be somewhat of a challenge. So with Unified Service Desk sitting on the desktop, you had the ability to integrate into your telephony system, which generally was sitting on premise, but then also allowed you to tap into cloud-based solutions, so tapping into D365 sitting in Azure, but then any other line of business application, whether it was sitting on premise, in this case, which was the underwriting system, and then the line of business applications would be sitting in a third-party service provider, cloud service provider. You'd be able to have access to all these different systems, but again, within one user interface. And the whole idea was to ensure that there wasn't high levels of integration and that the process was guided through Unified Service Desk using user interface integration. So having said that, so some of the principles or the guardrails that we used to make sure that we didn't fall into the trap of trying to hotwire everything together was through that architecture there were kind of 3 or 4 key systems. So there was your telephony system, there was the D365 system, the policy administration system, and then the underlying underwriting system. And the guide was to make sure that each one of those systems was only doing what its intended purpose was. So a very practical example is let CRM do what it's good at. Let your policy administration system do what it's good at. Let the telephony platform do what it's good at. And then stitch all these systems through Unified Service Desk. One of the other things which we had to bear in mind is coexistence between legacy systems and new systems. So in this specific instance, although I've seen it elsewhere, it's not just a switch off one and switch on the other. You've got an existing system which has been utilized for years and years and years. And through Unified Service Desk, you have the ability to then, using the tabs, to actually still allow processing in your older systems while then introducing your newer systems. So it was a way that you could start slow and then ramp up the newer technologies and ramp down the older technologies. A very practical example of that is in one of the other contact centers, they've got a lot of policy admin systems. And so you could potentially then utilize the tabs in Unified Service Desk to open up the policy admin system they need to use based on what the request is. Everything in one place kind of speaks to it for itself. Is the agents would only be aware that they were using Unified Service Desk. Behind the scenes, there's various different applications, but through guiding the agents through call scripting and through user interface integration, they're not too aware of what underlies Unified Service Desk. They're being guided to the right place at the right time and prompted to input the information that they need. Next was to limit system-to-system integration, because often what we find is the more integration there is, the more challenges and single points of failure you potentially have in your solutions. So as much as possible, we try to limit the integration between these different systems. So yes, we had a golden thread or a unique key that tied all these pieces together, but we would store that unique key across the different systems rather than duplicating data or replicating data across the different systems. So again, going to the principle of letting the policy admin system do what it's good at, let CRM do what it's good at. But then when you moving across into the policy admin system, provide some sort of key that ties back to your customer record. And lastly, simplicity and speed. So again, I think this speaks for itself, trying to make the solution or the process as simple as possible, which then speaks to training, hopefully taking a lot less time, and being able to upskill different levels of agents takes quicker. And also, hopefully it becomes a little bit intuitive and there's not too much guesswork that has to happen while you're being guided through the process. And speed's always top of mind due to the fact that the KPIs of most contact centers would be your call duration of the call work. Obviously, the quicker it is, the more you can get through in a day. So that is kind of what the vision was, what the conceptual architecture was, and positioned within the business case and the stuff that was signed off. I'll now hand over to Steve, who can speak through trying to make this vision a reality.
Thanks, Shawn. So yeah, I mean, so under making it real is really just some customer-facing experiences of implementing this. Some things we found that were challenging, and other things we found to be very useful. Just a lot of these will echo some of the points I made previously and some of the points that Shawn has made. The one UI is a real benefit. So anyone who's walked through a call center or done any IT projects with a call center, I mean, those guys are, alt tabbing to multiple different systems at once. They ask you for an ID number in this system because it takes an ID number. You can't remember your ID number, but you can give them your address. So they need to put your address in another system and copy and paste your ID number from that system into the original, your main policy administration system. It's a nightmare. So having one user interface where you have control of the real estate is really key. It talks to the problem statement and some of the sort of the business pain points around long training cycles, because they need to understand each system individually. It also talks to the fact that even though there are disparate systems or multiple integrations happening in the back end, the agent is kind of none the wiser. The ability for the agent to only sort of log in once in the mornings and rather logging into multiple systems as well might seem quite small, but anyone who's worked in IT, the production support guys are changing passwords left, right, and center every day. So it really has taken a lot of load off them as well. In terms of ease of use, I mean, with any IT system, obviously the easier it is, the more user-friendly, the more you'll get adoption. And this was true not only for the agents, but also for the developers. So the guys working with USD and the underlying applications, found the sort of native integration with Dynamics 365 really easy. The tabs, which I'll show you now in terms of the layout of USD, is sort of almost like a browser tab type structure. They found, so they called host controls, and they found it really easy to interact with these custom host controls, whether it is creating an XML page with the C# in the back end or whatever. You can really break it down from the bottom from the bottom up and build that tab into whatever you need it to be. Mirroring business process, again, with high staff turnover and long training cycles, the closer we can mirror the business process, the better it is for the business from a adherence perspective and for the agent themselves, because it means that sales are made actually transfer into money in the bank, and they don't fall off because of poor adherence in QA and in other places. So in a disparate IT environment where the agents are going in and out of different applications at once, it's very difficult for them to remember exactly what needs to happen from an adherence perspective over and above the systems. And from a system perspective, it's very difficult to intertwine the adherence of the process from one system to another system to another. So having the one UI, you really do, use Shawn's term, stitch that process together in a way that makes sure that it's easy for the agent to use, it's easy for the customer as well, because it's a much easier flow from one screen to the next, regardless of underlying system. Shortening the call duration. I mean, anyone who's worked with a call center knows the shorter you get the customer on the call, obviously the better it is for everybody, and the more likely of converting that lead or opportunity into a sale. So even though the project that we didn't change any of the disclosures, so legally the same disclosures word for word had to be read out on the sales call, just by merely positioning data differently and putting information into one UI as opposed to multiple systems. The call duration was cut by 35%. And that really does talk to USD's ability to present the right information at the right time, and making sure that there's no slow integrations moving between multiple systems at once. Presenting information, like I touched on already, to the agent at the right time is really crucial. So it's one thing having an easy screen to flow from one step to another. It's another thing to have your script and process adherence steps in there as well. But it's another to make sure that the agent has the relevant information at the point of that process stage in the sales process at the right time. And previously, with a lot of our legacy applications, it would mean an integration from an underlying application into our front end. And that front end was another CRM system, which essentially acted as a presentation layer to multiple other backend applications. Having USD, it removes that need. So to echo what Shawn was saying earlier, your CRM does your CRM piece, your PAS does your policy administration system, your telephony, etc. That houses the data that it should be master of, and it just presents that information at different times. And depending on where in USD, you can present multiple system data points on sort of the same quick view card or real estate. So regardless of what you're looking at or the information you need to read out or have handy when you have a customer on the line, you can get it from multiple systems in one place. So that's sort of the, just sort of summarizing some of the more obvious sort of wins from the actual implementation of USD in our environment. And I'll take you through some of the screens now, which will hopefully make it a little bit more tangible, some of the points that we both mentioned. But it's also important to highlight some of the challenges in putting new technologies in, and some of those are that USD is a very data-driven piece of technology. So maintaining that data can be quite a challenge. It doesn't move across with deployments. So you need to make sure that your config data is maintained and it is the same across environments. Otherwise, you have issues from environment to environment. The because it's very data driven as well, there's certain options that USD gives you, and those are kind of the options, and you kind of got to take it or leave it. So even though there are quite a few options there, and you can do a fair amount with XML pages and C#, etc. There are some limitations, and you do sometimes find the need to provide workarounds, whether it's through a web resource or JavaScript. But generally speaking, we were within the functionality or options in USD and extending some of those with JavaScript and web resources. We were able to do our end-to-end sales process with 5 different applications in the back end, take our call duration down 35% and increase our sales actually as a result by 25%. Sales per day per agent on average. So it really has made a big difference in our business, and potential for improvements. I mean, when you build something for the first time, there's always ways that you could probably make things better if you had a second go at it. And I'll mention some of those as we go through these next few slides. So what you're seeing here is Unified Service Desk for Dynamics 365. You can see that text on the top left of your screen. I've hidden a few pieces of information that might be a bit more business sensitive, so it does look a little bit bland. That's the reason. So the one UI kind of spans everything you see there, and we've in this screen anyway, we've separated it from a left hand and a sort of more centered screen view. On the left hand side is a constant. We always have our agent script there, whether it is to read out verbatim to customers or intuitive objection handling. That all sits there on the left hand side, and that's the scripting tool, which is a completely different tool to Dynamics, which you see in front of you there in the main pane. And another thing you might notice for those who are familiar with Dynamics 365 is all the buttons are hidden. So for those who have spent a lot of time JavaScript trying to hide certain things from agents, USD is really helpful in this regard. It only not only makes things very easy to present, but it does also hide a lot of the complexity that we don't want the agents to click around and try and discover. So we only serve them, if they're a sales agent, for example, we only serve them the ability to search leads and quotes. If you are in servicing, you can only search quotes and cases. And that is, some of the functionality that USD allows us to have. You'll see on the left-hand side, we've got a single session, test T process session, and lead, quote, and contact are essentially 3 tabs that I spoke to earlier. Lead, quote, and contact are different applications. So lead is your Dynamics application, even though quote is obviously got a quoting entity in Dynamics 365. The quote is from the policy administration system, and then contact goes back into Dynamics. So even though the agent is none the wiser, they do go from one system out into another and then back into Dynamics 365. And we're also able to pull the information from one screen onto the other, so that the agent doesn't have to double capture. At the top left there as well, just above the session text, you can see hyperlinks for the dashboard, search leads and search quotes. And like I mentioned earlier, we can serve to the agents only the information they're supposed to see, and not waste their time or potentially incur the risk of them clicking around and having to develop additional security around what they can and can't see. We let them see a dashboard, we let them see the leads and quotes, and that really is it, to really simplify their workload. This then goes from, again, out of the policy administration system back into Dynamics, just to highlight that point. And now we have a slightly different flow where this point in time, the agent needs access to cases as well. So they also have a case view where that then fires a case off to quality assurance to pick that up and do the assessment of that quote. Another really nice feature of USD is the session timer on the bottom left. So it's also nice to be able to, the agents can kind of get a gauge of exactly how long their phone call is taking or their session is taking. We don't have that on our telephony application for the agents at the moment. And they know generally how many sales they make in a day, and how long a sales call needs to be in order to be high chance of conversion. So that session information there is also really useful. What I wanted to highlight on this screen is just on the right-hand side, you'll see that sales confirmation. So the sales agent is at the point in the sales process where they've confirmed certain, they've gone through the whole sales process, they've gone past the quote, it's very close to being finished, and they're reading out the summary disclosure and confirming some contact information. Now, at this point in time, there are often questions from the customer around information that they've disclosed, and the sum assured and the rates that they've got, all of that sort of stuff. And that quick view card on the right-hand side is essentially just some real estate in USD that integrates with our policy administration system and serves that information up as a quick view. There's a button at the bottom if you scroll to open the policy administration if they need to, but essentially the information that they need, regardless of what system is coming from, is sitting there in one screen. On the left-hand side, you've got your scripting application. In the middle, you've got your CRM application. On the right-hand side, you have your policy administration application, all sitting in one screen. And that's really powerful to enable the agents to have the right information at the right time. And just to finish that off, there's, the sales process closes to their dashboard. And those who've seen Dynamics 365, this is the Dynamics 365 dashboard nested very nicely in USD. And the agents, again, none the wiser whether they're in Dynamics 365 or USD, you're surfacing the same functionality for them to use. So taking advantage of what USD offers as well as what Dynamics 365 offers. And Warner, I think that's it from our side. I'll give you back control, but if there's any questions, please, now's a good time to shout.
Can I maybe chip in with a question, Steve? And obviously I know quite a bit about this project, but
sure.
For those of us on the call that have been involved in Dynamics for some time, yeah, I mean, I've been involved in the space for a while, and often USD's had a bad rap. People that have worked with it swear they'll never do it again. People that have tried it complain it's complicated. Genuinely, how's that experience gone in your project?
Listen, I think we'll put it this way. I mean, I heard all of that before we, before Shawn and I tackled it, and I think some of it is warranted. It's not the most fully functioned application to use. It's pretty simple, and the options available are quite extensive. But also, one could probably always want for more. But when it came to the actual integration side of things, which is really sort of the core of what we were looking for here, to surface information from different underlying applications, whether they're set in the cloud or on premises, that part was really simple. There was some funky stuff around trying to pull data across screens, which we found a bit challenging. But yeah, I mean, Roger, to answer your question, I'd say it's absolutely fine. It's certainly much better than what I'd read online and what I'd spoken to a few people about. But I'm quite keen to see what Microsoft brings out in terms of taking USD forward into other versions of USD or other things that they're working on that kind of talks to the one UI and maybe the web-based version to assist with these disparate systems that many organizations tend to struggle with.
Thank you, Steve. Roger, do you want to maybe add to that? I know you guys have.
No, I thought that was a great answer. I may just leave it at that. I think, yeah, having been involved in this project, I think it's been a surprise to us as well that a lot of those fears had been unfounded. That we've got the tool in production now for a couple of months with low usage, and more recently in the last couple of weeks with very high usage. And yeah, the tool has been stable and it's functional. I mean, certainly all the benefits Steve and Shawn are talking about, we're seeing in real life now, which is tremendous. So yeah, I think that the tool has evolved to the point where it has really been a tremendous asset to us.
Wonderful. In the chat window of Teams, I've posted the link for the Business Application Summit, the online event. Be sure to check that out. And I think that, you know, there is one question that we have on our pigeonhole. And if there's any other questions, please feel free to ask it. I'm just going to share that screen quickly and then let's have a look. Come now, Teams. But yes, I mean, I'm a customer of Liberty, and you know, I always love to see, you know, what customers are using, as well as you know, how do they support their customer base, and it's always exciting to see that they're using the Microsoft tech and the Microsoft technology, and you know, we always get a kick out of it to also see you know, how they're leveraging the tech and integrate it into third-party systems. So I know USD especially integrates very well with a lot of the telephony platforms, you know, your Avayas, your NICE, and all those type of platforms. And that is especially is great in the sense where, you know, a call comes in, it gets routed to the right agent, and then that agent just sits back and all the information of that customer pops up in front of them. And they know exactly what context the person is phoning on and just can have a conversation, right? Okay, let's have a look before we do our closing. So there's one question from Marius. Is there a document available with the changes you demonstrated? And definitely there is. So we'll definitely share the changes. I think what we can do is that, you know, we can keep the team site up and running. So, you know, if there is any chats and things like that, we can keep the team site up and running. And then also, if there's any changes that you guys found that will help going forward and help others going forward. I mean, this is a community, so you know, it would be great seeing that as well. And we'll post that on, and we'll also append the changes into a lot of these you know, apps that we've seen. One thing I must say with the PowerApps, especially where it's helpful, is that one, you make the change and then you export the solution, and then you share the solution into the you know, the broader audience, so everybody gets that change that was made, right? So that's one of the things that obviously we've done as well, you know, at some of our customers, in the sense where we go and we make a change, we export the solution, and then we email the solution to about 2 or 3 other people, and they just import the changes, and you know, it is available for them. Once again, the Business Application Summit, please have a look at this. This covers everything that's inside of the Power Platform, from our low-code, no-code solution, you know, right through to our Dynamics as well. I want to, just before closing, share another resource with you guys. So there is some people that are very new to Dynamics and also want to learn a bit. So we've got our Microsoft Learn site. So if you go to microsoft.com/learn, it will take you through to a self-learning portal. And it's not just Dynamics, so and it's all for free, right? So the great thing about it is from Azure, from Office, from Power BI, anything that you can essentially think of, but there's also Power Platform information in here. So for instance, this module, Introduction to PowerApps, is just a prime example. And the nice thing about it is instructor-led as well. So what I mean by that is you go and you run through the modules yourself, but there's a little bit of snippets and videos around that. So the guys tell you exactly where to click and what to do. And also, this is in actual fact some of the documentation or the learning and guidance that's used for certification. So if you guys want to go write certification, get certified in any of the offerings, you know, this is the place where you prepare for that exams and that certifications, right? So that is all from my side. I want to thank you everybody for joining us today once again. It's been a massive turnout. I'm very happy, and I just want to say that thank you for your time, and you guys need to stay safe, do the social distancing thing, and hopefully soon in the future we'll have an in-person event. We'll post the updates on when the next event will be. If there's any topic suggestions, please once again ask us, and we will get that content available for you guys. And then also, if you want to become a speaker and also demonstrate maybe a solution that you have, right? Maybe you've implemented some awesome Power Apps, Power BI, Flow, or even USD for that matter. Please come on, and we can definitely use that content to drive the community further. So once again, thank you all for your time, and have a wonderful evening.
Morning, could I maybe just weigh in and add one or two things there?
Please do, Ewan.
Okay, so I responded to Marius to your question, but I've also added, see, okay, you responded there. Okay, on the IM window, I see you said thanks. Okay, just wanted to point out to you that I attached it to the IM window. So for anyone else on the call, if you wanted the changes to the crisis app that I shared in the deck, you'll find the file in the IM window. I've attached it there. And then the second thing is, it's in sharing in the community thing, it's not always about the full solution. Sometimes people come up with great creative ways of building little component pieces. And even if you've just built a component that does an amazing little function, that is definitely something worth sharing. And you could just share that component. You also have an amazing component library that you can share with people. And that's actually the whole community spirit. It's about sharing things. Sometimes it's not easy to share an entire solution, because I know we work with different partners and stuff like that. So it's difficult to share that because of IP and protection of IP, etc. But sometimes just a component and a great feature is something that you can share. So consider that. And if you want, present the component, how you designed it, maybe a great SVG component that does some amazing graphics with animation, etc. Please share those stuff, and then let's get into the spirit of sharing those components with others as well. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And for me, looking forward to the next one. Thanks, Monet.
Ewan, maybe I can take that a little bit further. I think for our next one, I mean, we're going to do this again in about a month, right, Monet?
Yeah. So it's all dependent on this lockdown as well. But, I think that we can definitely have this online next month as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's stick to a monthly rhythm. And I think we'll be looking for content like this from those of you in the audience. I think there's two requests. One is please reach out if there's something that you've been working on that you think would be worth showing. It doesn't have to be a half an hour long presentation. I think you alluded to that, Ewan, even if it's something small. We can maybe have a few different bits and pieces that people can present. And I think the other request is please share this and this community, the Meetup, with your colleagues and peers. I guess the more we can get both the Power App and the Dynamics world into this group to share ideas and make it more useful. Any other ideas you've got to make it a useful event would be most appreciated.
Yeah.
Cool.
Even if you're new to the community, or you're new to any of the solutions we've shown tonight or spoke about tonight, and you want us to cover that, have an introduction session, what is PowerApps, how do you get started, how do you get a trial, how do I share it in my organization, how do I use the templates, anything like that, please feel free to reach out. And it will also be great, to just see how people actually utilize this PowerApps itself, right? Especially in these times that we found ourselves in. So once again, thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Monet. Cheers.
Thanks, Monet. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.